Ghostbusters Afterlife is the highly and longly anticipated sequel of the original film from 1984, directed by Jason Reitman, starring the likes of McKenna Grace, Paul Rudd, Carrie Coon, and some other people who we'll talk about in a little bit. Phoebe, her mother, and her brother settle in this remote farm in the middle of Oklahoma where all these strange occurrences are going on, like earthquakes and supernatural sightings, all somehow tying into the legacy of her grandfather who died a week prior to them moving into the house. Paul Rudd is the school teacher that's also tied into helping them out. Phoebe meets a kid who calls himself Podcast, since he has his own podcast that he goes on about various things like conspiracy theories, supernatural stuff. You get the idea. Ghost stuff occurs, and all kinds of craziness ensues. We've seen this in a Ghostbusters movie before, and it all happens again here, so it's not really surprising. The film's been out for about a week, and as of this viewing, I saw it last night, so I'm gonna be talking about the plot and certain characters that show up. If you don't want to know what the movie's about, if you haven't seen it yet, get away, that's your warning. I would not call myself a big Ghostbusters fan necessarily. I do really like the original film. I think it's a really fun time. It's very iconic in so many ways. I don't really need to talk about why it's good. Just go give it a watch if you haven't seen it. As for the second movie, had its moments, wasn't as good though. As for the 2016 Ghostbusters, didn't bother seeing it. Not because women were in the leading roles, I just didn't think it looked that funny. So I have not bothered with it. Maybe one of these days I'll give it a try, but I wasn't exactly, no. Going into Ghostbusters Afterlife, I wasn't really going in with mammoth expectations, nor did I have low expectations. I was just hoping for a fun adventure where they just chase some ghosts around and they have to stop this big supernatural threat that's coming in. And for the most part, I got that. And I'm more than happy to say I got even more than that. This movie is really, really fun, appropriately nostalgic, but also with the right combination of something new. A lot of people have criticized this movie for being too fan service-like and too nostalgic and relying too much on fan service, that the film can't stand on its own. Things that we've heard a million times before. People comparing it with the likes of the recent Star Wars films, particularly Episode 7, even though I disagree with that notion. I'll talk about this as we go on throughout the review, but just to get this out of the way, I understand why people are saying that. You could argue that maybe it does rely a little too often on fan service and nostalgia. Personally, I was okay with it. I did not mind that at all. I do wish that they had a different villain instead of Gozer, who they end up bringing back anyway. Maybe a different villain would have sufficed, or maybe something similar that they could have brought back. Maybe bring back the one from the second Ghostbusters movie. I don't know. I get it, you have to appeal to a wider audience, the fans of the original. The younger generation who might not be familiar with the original Ghostbusters, they're not gonna know the difference. It's the Star Killer Base Syndrome from Episode 7. The Gatekeeper, the Keymaster, they both return in this movie possessing two human bodies, Phoebe's mom and Paul Rudd's character, Gary. And they do read some of the spray-painted graffiti on some of the rubble outside of the dirt farm. The seas boil and the skies fell, which is a nod to the original where Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson's characters read from the Book of Revelation. Ivo Shandor, who is the architect of that building that Dana Barrett lived in New York City, is brought back in this movie as basically the creator of the town that they're living in. Plenty of other stuff too. There are similar plot points, yes, but this is not a beat-for-beat retread in my book. Similar to Episode 7, similar plot points, but it plays out very differently. I would argue in some ways that it's not really the original film. I mean, besides from Gozer returning and the two dogs possessing the human bodies. To me, that's about it. It's a very different sequence of events that plays out here. There's a young girl trying to figure out what the legacy of her grandfather is. None of the original characters were doing that in the original film. This is also a totally different location, in the middle of Oklahoma, not New York City. Phoebe is very reserved and doesn't wear her emotions on her sleeves and makes all these stupid jokes that some are funny and some are very, very lame. And kid actors in general tend to be very annoying. Not the case here. McKenna Grace, who I actually remember from the movie Gifted with Chris Evans, she is wonderful in the movie. She does a great job of holding back her emotions and subduing herself, but when it calls for her to be emotional, she does it in a way that doesn't come off as insufferable, particularly in the film's finale when you see the ghost of her grandfather come back. I really like her friendship with Podcast, who's also a real fun addition to the film. Very different personalities, although it's the right meshing of a camaraderie that's needed. As for the brother character, I didn't really care about his storyline as much. He's trying to win over this girl that's working at the same place that he ends up getting a job at. The mom doesn't have a whole lot to do. She does have a romantic interest with Paul Rudd's character, but there's a really great moment where she goes into the basement of the house and she sees all the pictures of herself, and she's guided by what's later revealed to be the ghost of Egon. She sees that he actually did care about her and did love her and was keeping an eye on her whole life, even though he ran away to find out what was going on in this place. She spent so many years thinking that he was a jerk and a deadbeat dad and did not have a care for her at all. No dialogue whatsoever. Realizes that she was wrong. Not groundbreaking in any sense of the word, but I would say it's very, very effective. And a similar thing happens with Phoebe as the ghost of her grandfather guides her into the basement of the house with the ghost detector. He helps her rebuild the proton pack that she uses to catch that big ghost. Very similar to Slimer, although it's very different from Slimer since this thing eats pipes or metal equipment or something, whereas Slimer was just eating a bunch of food. Going on her first ghost hunting adventure in a really thrilling chase sequence throughout the town in the Ghostbusters car, a very welcome sight. And Podcast is able to use the ghost trap on a remote control car as they're chasing the ghost throughout the town. Another thing from the originals, yes, but they use it in a different way, which I liked. As for Paul Rudd, he's not in there quite as much as I would have liked, but he's just a joy to have around. And him being the sexiest man alive, yeah, Ant-Man, the sexiest man alive. Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, step aside. Paul Rudd's the man here. He adds a really good amount of humor to the film, and thankfully it's not annoying. As for the exposition that's used to explain what's happening, Egon was setting up all these traps to keep Gozer at bay in the middle of this fault line where Gozer was using as a portal to enter our world, just like she did in the original through that building in New York. Certain times and dates is when Gozer tried to break through our dimension. Based on Ivo Shandor's rituals throughout history, Egon was able to figure out the timetable, establish all these proton packs to keep it at bay on a daily basis whenever they try to break through. And when Phoebe calls the phone number that she sees in the old YouTube video, which gets answered by Ray, who explains what happened to Egon in the years that followed, it's a very emotional gut punch where he feels betrayed by someone who he called his friend, and they all just disappeared and went their separate ways when they realized that all the ghost sightings disappeared and there really wasn't anything left to live for, other than going back to their old lives. We'll get to the finale, but in this scene at least, the addition of Dan Aykroyd does not come off to me as disrespectful or relying too much on fan service. It's like, in a way, showing the fans of the original film what they've been up to all this time. Very, very effective. So Gozer returns in the form of a woman, just like before, but Phoebe, along with her brother and Podcast, managed to free their mom. Gozer is portrayed by Olivia Wilde. I just took one look at her and went, oh my God. It's 13. Oh, and J.K. Simmons is Ivo Shandor. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Although it's a really quick scene. That's a bummer.
Get on with it, you moron!
Okay, fine. Calm down. Once they get back to the farm site, they learn that Egon was planning a trap to trap Gozer once and for all underneath his silo. Phoebe uses the proton pack to subdue Gozer to no avail, and then we get a great sight. The original 3 Ghostbusters return. Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Ernie Hudson. The moment I heard the voice saying, "Hey, you!" or whatever he said, I instantly thought, oh no, no way. And there they were. People in the audience I saw it in. There wasn't a whole lot of people in the theater that I saw it in. They cheered and they clapped. And finally, when Ray is asked a question if he's a god, he says yes. All right. This chick is toast! So the original 3, along with Phoebe, managed to subdue Gozer, along with the assistance of a fully materialized spirit ghost of Egon Spengler himself. And in this case, Harold Ramis's likeness is used. It could have easily came off as disrespectful, but me personally, I think it was just beautiful. It was a beautiful handling of that character, and when they put the ghost next to the other 3 guys, I was in awe. And I was kind of worried that they would have him talk, but I was kind of relieved that they didn't. Because no one really knows how ghosts would talk or spirits would talk to the living, if you know what I mean. I mean, that's a whole nother topic. I guess it was like CGI recreation from the previous films that he was in at the time when he was alive, and also a body double was standing in place. Any case, I think it was a very, very respectful way of handling this, similar to Carrie Fisher in Rise of Skywalker after her death. And the reunion that he has with his daughter, I almost started crying. It was, again, just beautiful. And the tribute that they throw in there when he disappears into the sky, into the afterlife, and they say, "For Harold." Oh God, I'm gonna cry. Oh yeah, and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man comes back, as we saw in the trailers, although many versions of him this time around. Seeing them crawling all over the shelves at Walmart, it was a different way of using him, which I liked, instead of having him be the giant that he was in Manhattan. Another thing that fans will remember, but again, plays out very differently. And I can't stress this enough. I understand why people are complaining about this, but I personally don't feel this way. I think it's the right blend of new and the right blend of the old. Some are not gonna like this, and that's fine. Personally, I was satisfied with it. And we get 2 credit scenes where Sigourney Weaver returns as Dana and gives Peter Venkman the test, trying to guess what's on the other side of the card, and she learns that he marked the cards and zaps him anyway. And then Winston talks to Annie Potts' character from the original, how he became a businessman and how he's gonna go back to the Ghostbusters firehouse. And then we see the box where the specters of the ghosts are locked in, and there's the red light flickering, which means there could be a sequel. Why else would they have Phoebe show up? I mean, she is the next generation of Spangler, for crying out loud. To my knowledge, there's no confirmation of a sequel, but if there is, I would be fine with it. I would love to see McKenna Grace return as this character. There's a lot of potential for different ways that they could use this Ghostbusters franchise now, because let's be honest, it makes money, it's an established property. Odds are there's gonna be more stuff coming. If that post-credit scene is any indication, there's gonna be more. All in all, Ghostbusters Afterlife, I think, is the proper sequel that fans have wanted for a long time. Except for maybe a little bit of Ghostbusters 2. I think it's appropriately nostalgic, but also has the right amount of new stuff thrown in there too. If you feel differently, that's cool, I understand. But personally, I was satisfied with it. Those are my thoughts on Ghostbusters Afterlife. Comment below and tell me what your thoughts are. Stay tuned for more stuff from me, and I'll see you guys later.